Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar about DataBroker DAO. It's been a while since our previous one, and I wanted to take the time today to show you some of the things we have been doing the past few weeks. First and foremost, the new preview of the new platform. If anyone has checked out our news articles the last days, you would have seen it. But I wanted to show you what we've been doing the last few months, actually. Remembering we have a working beta platform, and it has been live since January last year. We've been working with our Alliance members. I think there are around 15 at the moment, to really figure out what the requirements are for such a marketplace. Of course, the basics of the marketplace are clear, but a lot of companies we've noticed have very specific questions, very specific needs that they need answered. One of the most pressing ones was, how do we ensure the quality of the data we are buying? Maybe in between, if there are any questions, you can ask them in the questions tab in GoToWebinar to the right of your screen normally, and we will answer them later on. So the discoverability on the one hand and on the quality of the data on the other hand were very important for all our members. Both sellers and buyers of data said, okay, this is priority number one. And those of you who were with us before and in the previous in the last year, you would have noticed that we had this on our roadmap, but not for a few months. So we had to reshuffle the roadmap and look at, okay, how are we going to do this in an effective way, in a trustless way, in a blockchain way, without having to manually verify everything that came on there, because that's just impossible with the amount of sensors we are targeting. So we worked on a system around staking, and I'll explain staking shortly. What we tried to do was, first of all, we wanted to prevent a lot of people from entering fake sensors on the platform. Well, the challenge there is, how do you make this? How do you do this? How do you do this without verifying each and every sensor? And we decided to go for a way that every sensor owner who wanted to place sensors on the platform had to lock up some of their DTX tokens while their sensor was on the platform. Meaning that even if you could put on fake sensors still, but it would cost you some DTX tokens, and in the end it becomes economically unfeasible to actually do so. At the same time, we wanted people who bought data from a sensor and that sensor didn't deliver what was promised to have a way of recouping their cost, recouping their damage. And so we built in a system we call opening a claim, which also requires stakes, because what we didn't want was people opening frivolous claims, which only generates workload. And they also have to stake a little bit of their DTX tokens in their claim, meaning they pay a little DTX when they claim they have been wronged. And at that point in time, the DataBroker DAO administrator, which is not fully trustless, but it's an intermediary who will determine if the claim is valid or not. Why did we keep this intermediary? We kept this intermediary because we wanted to make sure that we're selling private information. The value of the data is in the fact that you don't put it online for free. So if we wanted to do a fully trustless system, then everyone in the system should be able to verify if the data was correct or not. Meaning it had to be fully public, negating the value of the data itself. So we had to put in a centralized party who is trusted by both the seller and the buyer to determine if the data or if the claim is valid or not. Now, if the claim was valid and some buyer got wronged, we would take away the sensor, the fake sensor or the wrong sensor from the platform, and we would take away the tokens that person had staked. those tokens would have been I will at that point will be distributed across everybody who staked, who opened a claim against this sensor. Meaning, if there's two people who were wronged at semi the same time, they both get a share of the amount of tokens that were staked. If the claim is false, there's no grounds to the claim, the token staked by the claimee would go to the sensor owner because they were wronged, mostly in reputation. Now, leveraging this system, we could even go a little bit further. One of the advantages we had was, well, now we have this staking system, and the word we use, or the sentence we use internally, is it's essentially putting your DTX where your mouth is. So if I put my DTX up as a sensor owner, and I trust my data, then I would possibly be willing to put in more DTX tokens, to lock up more DTX tokens. Now, if I do so, which would mean that I trust my data more, or enough that I'm sure that nobody can open a claim against me that would be deemed valid. So we thought on how can we leverage this, how can we make this smarter, and we said, okay, these extra tokens that can be staked, maybe we should use those as a sorting mechanism. So if you stake more than the minimum amount that's required, your data, your sensor would come at the top of the list within a certain category, probably, or a certain region, would come at the top of the list, above maybe a similar sensor with similar data, but that didn't stake this much. And why would this be valid or real? Because if you stake more, you're more sure of your data. If you're more sure of your data, means that a buyer can be more sure that the data is correct. And if the buyer is more sure, then what should he buy? Of course, the data from a sensor that has been staked, has more stakes in it, because everybody trusts it more. So that's the general idea of the underlying of the platform. That's why we did a full re-engineering of the entire system, based on entire system apart from what we had already. Next thing we did, and we started looking at, okay, how can we make the discoverability better? How can we search for places? How can we search for data? How would somebody buy data? Now, large-scale buyers will buy data via an API. They will use the distributed API to search for data, to find their data, to buy data in bulk, short periods, long periods. But we're looking more at the maybe lower volume buyers, or the less programmatic buyers. How do they discover nice data, nice sensors, nice data sets? And in line with our tagline, which is nowadays global market for local data, we decided to go for a map. And I'll show it to you here. I hope everybody can see my screen. We looked at how do people find data? How do people look for data? Where you're interested in? And we figured out, okay, this is of course a splash page where people have a first view of, look, there is data. Right now I'm looking at it from where I am right now. So you see the map of where I am. In the next release, you guys will also see a different map than the one that is here. But we look at where you are. We look at what sensors are available in your region. What types are they? Because there are lots of different types of sensors. So we have air quality sensors, humidity sensors. These are PM25 and PM10 are parts per million of pollutants in the air. There are two different standards, two different types of sensors that will deliver this data. And we build in a full functioning filtering system where you can choose, okay, I don't want humidity sensors. Then it has to reload the sensors, of course. And a second thing that was important is, okay, how can we, if you look at a map with pins, well, everybody can build a map with pins. But how do you find that certain sensors are actually transmitting data or sending data? So we added these little status icons where you could actually see data coming in from this sensor and realize if it's an active one or not. If we look at one, you can open it up a little bit and you see some more default information. So this is the sensor that will deliver data daily. And if we go a little bit deeper, we see a detail page. Now, a detail page is not that extensive. Why is it not that extensive? And you would have seen in the previous version that there were graphs. We are talking about IoT sensors. IoT sensors have a low volume during an hour. So if we wanted to show, for example, for this sensor, the last 10 items or the last 10 readings to draw some kind of a fancy graph, we would actually be exposing 10 days of data. And either you have to put those 10 days at 10 days behind in the time, so 10 days before. So it's not, so there's no value in it for right now. But that would mean we had to keep a record and I store every IoT sensor's data for such an amount of time, which is impossible and we don't want to do. Or we just show an example reading as we do right now, and allow people to purchase it from here. You see in this case, so this is the sensor. It's a temperature sensor. Everybody can choose their own name, which will be, of course, a little bit marketing driven. It's a temperature sensor. The cost price is 120 DTX per reading. This is not necessarily a real price. We are trying out some different pricings in this preview to see what fits best. And this owner actually stakes almost 6,000 DTX, which is a little bit overkill probably, since we're trying out a default around 10. Of course, if you know that most sensor owners have multiple sensors, hundreds of sensors, you don't want the price per sensor to be too high. It's of course everything explained, and you can then buy access. Right now, we focused on this release, on this preview, fully on the discoverability, and the purchasing will follow on later in the week with registration and delivery of the data to every buyer. If we look at the maps, so this is a sensor. We just used some sensors around the region where we are, around Belgium. There are way more, but we have some work to do on keeping the performance in line with what we expect when you zoom out to a world level, because at some point a few million of these pins on a map is just not something your browser can handle. So this is what we released this week. Next week, early next week, we're releasing the next version, which will be this was the recovery release. Next version will be the purchasing release, where the entire purchasing flow will be activated and actually usable on this preview version. What we'll do to make this actually work is we created a system. It's running on a private network right now, where we will give everyone 1,000 free fake DTX tokens to actually use in this platform. So where do we go from here? I already talked about the next release, the purchasing release, and the release after that will be the add a sensor release. Again, these are the web interface versions of these releases. The smart contracts are ready. The API is ready. It just has to tie into an interface. And if you realize that most of these sensors will come via large-scale network operators, or gateway operators, as we call them, will mean that the enlisting of these sensors will also happen, in most cases, from the API, from a programmatic perspective, and not from the interface itself. But of course, an interface is very important for people to actually try it out and figure out how this works. So where do we go from here after these releases, which is a little bit about the roadmap. We have been working very hard on this release and on the smart contracts beneath these. Security audits are underway on these smart contracts so that they can be deployed very soon or in after the main sale. Now, what are the plans for this year and next year? In first case, we will have to extend the team and onboard them. From a technical perspective, these contracts are extremely complex. They have a lot of ins and outs to make this actually work. There's a lot of work on solving certain scalability issues in the blockchains that we have to account for. Just to give an idea, if we want to onboard a network operator with 2 million sensors, well, it takes a while before you can get them all listed on the platform, and we are figuring out ways to increase that speed. So onboarding the team, onboarding these new team members will be a significant task. We've noticed this before in scaling the business, that this is not hiring somebody and expecting them to be fully productive the next day. It takes time to get them worked in, to get them actually contributing significantly to the platform, which will be an important time. Well, it's not a time sink, it's not a time waste, but a significant time spent on our end. Furthermore, the main road to mass adoption are these gateway operators, and we need these gateway operators to host a blockchain node, to host the distributed API, and to integrate with it from their systems. To ease this adoption, we will be spending also significant time on actually helping these gateway operators integrate with the platform. It's just crossing that first hurdle for them to get where they want to be, which will be an important one. This will both be on the infrastructure side of things, deploying these nodes and the distributed API, but also providing client libraries to actually integrate the distributed API into their platforms. The next one is quite a significant update, and it's also something that's being driven out of the requirements of the Alliance, which is, how can I sell data not to everyone? Sounds both strange and obvious, but if I have a lot of sensors, I would like to sell them to anyone except my competitor. Or in a case in the automotive industry where we've been working to, I have this data and I want to sell them just to these 10 affiliates we have or 10 partners we have, but not to anyone else. This is where we will be implementing private sales, not to be confused with the private sale of a token sale, but private sales in the sense of private data sales, where in the listing part of the story you can actually say, okay, this data is available, but only to this, and this person. The big challenge there will be, how do you do the addressing? How do you determine who somebody is or not? And secondly, whitelisted sales is essentially the same, but turned around. I want to sell to just these 3 people, or to these people, but not that person. Lastly, no, not lastly. The last thing this year we have planned are improving the front-end interface and providing it as a white-labeled solution to gateway operators. So right now we're working with gateway operators, a lot of them, who have actual IoT system, IoT interfaces, IoT portals for their clients. And in their case, they want to integrate the marketplace directly into their portal, so the client doesn't have to visit a separate site. And they can then, and it looks fully branded in their look and feel. They talk directly to the distributed API. Now, there's a portion, let's say it's around a quarter of the gateway operators we're talking to, that don't have such an interface. They don't have a portal for their IoT clients. Maybe they're just starting out with IoT services, and they want the marketplace, but without all the work of building the front-end interface themselves. So we're going to be working on improving the interface as is, and then making sure it can be white labeled to be skinnable in the look and feel of the gateway operator, so they can easily deploy a marketplace if they don't want to put in the work themselves of building the front-end interface. The last thing, which is more in the moonshot range, it's not moonshot range, but in the longer term, is from the perspective, well, now we have a marketplace and there will be buyers and sellers or data on it. What extra services can we build on top of this that have value to the clients? Do we provide storage of sensor data? Do we provide certain aggregation built into the platform? Do we can even go as far as, do we provide AI tools that can easily integrate with the marketplace, or plugins for certain tools that our customers are using to have out of their applications direct access to data out of the marketplace, which is something we will look further into discovering what's needed, what the clients want, where we can increase the revenue for the DataBroker DAO platform over the course of the next year. So planning wise, we will be very busy with everything except this last part this year. Might probably extend a little bit into next year as well. And of course, these extra side services are easily available, are something that happen continuously, but we'll mostly be focusing on next year. I think it's time for some questions. I know this went quite fast. So I have a question here. To explain why do you base your actual price per token on the value it could have in 2024 if you're successful? Well, first of all, I want to make a few things clear. So in the economic modeling, as we describe in the white paper as well, we start out from a very, very pessimistic view of what the platform could do. Somewhere over here, doesn't matter, I'll find it later. So we started out with how many sensors are there? How many sensors are there in the world? And that amount is really, really enormous. It's a $600 billion industry last year. It's and it's gonna triple. It's gonna go into in the trillions by 2019. And it will keep growing exponentially until 2024 at least. So what we said was, well, instead of saying we will cover the entire market, because that's just plain bad business modeling, we say let's cover a very short amount, a very limited amount of sensors that we'll actually have on the platform. Limited in the sense 225 million sensors, which is an incredible amount of sensors. But in a large scale, we say, okay, let's be realistic. Let's be even pessimistic that we will not have all the sensors in the world on this platform by that time. Now, if you look at 225 million 225 million sensors on the platform, you can then start to see, okay, what are they worth? Where do you determine the value? On the one hand, you have what is 1 week of sensor data worth? Which is the important thing. So we decided to go, or we calculated that right now, if you look at the 600 billion last year, in 2016, that if in most cases when we talk to clients or to people actually buying sensors, these companies have a 2-year business case for their sensor deployment. So they buy these sensors, they deploy them, and they say, well, in 2 years we have enough value out of the data to actually make a profit. So it's a cost, and they gain something by having this data. So 2 years, so you can divide the amount of money in half, so you're left at 300, and which is the value of the data for one of these owners themselves. Now, if we then say 10% of the data is interesting to sell, and you will sell this 1 to 3 times if it's interesting data of sell, you can start making the calculation on how much money are these sensors worth, and it's all very conservative modeling. So we really wanted to make sure that the value of the data is not that the amount of sensors is not extreme, that the amount of data, amount of the price per data is not extreme, and that we have room to grow. That there's a big potential to grow if everything goes as planned, and that's why we said, okay, that's how the calculation came to stand. And then why did we pick the amount of sensors in 2024? Is in a system like this, you have to look forward. There's only this is the only spot, the only point in time where we are going to raise or to sell these tokens to get the capital to build this out until the success that we expect it to be or want it to be. So you have to look a bit forward and say, okay, what is the timeline until this thing can be deemed an incredible success, which is for us 2024. And our modeling in 2024 says 225 million sensors on there, where we then, with the calculation, not by what the value would be in 2024, but the value that we can actually prove that the value is right now, or even 2 years ago, how much would that be worth? So that's why we went with the amount of sensors in 2024 and the price for from last year. Voila, those are that's the important part of the question. I don't know, Mehdi, if that was what you expected as an answer, or you want more. While we're here and we have some time until the next question, I wanted to quickly go over the sale period coming up. So Monday we will start with the pre-sale. The pre-sale will start, it's 4 p.m. Central European time. Normally everybody who already subscribed got an email with with a calculation on when that is in your time zone. And we're gonna be starting with a minimum of 10 Ether purchases. And these people will get a 50% bonus. Which means you will get around 6,000 DTX tokens per Ether invested Ether spent. The week afterwards, we will start the main sale. So the pre-sale has ended by then. The main sale will start, where the base price will be 4,000 DTX per Ether. The 4,000 DTX per Ether is the amount we calculated based on these numbers we've just went through, and just the first day to incentivize people to actually join, we will be doing a little 10% bonus on day one. So don't be late to miss that one if you don't want to spend more than 10 Ether. Before and during the token sale, you can register. You can register right now, and you can join the referral system. The referral system is based on you will get a link with a unique code which is tied to your registration. Anyone following that link and later on purchasing DTX tokens will get you 5% of the amount of tokens they've bought in your wallet. So it's an easy way, if you share our message, if you share this link, to earn some more tokens on top of what you have spent yourself. Last but not least, the week after the DTX token sale ends, we will be making this the token tradable, and we will put it on several exchanges. Make sure to look at the blog, at the Medium blog, to see there's an article there on the decentralized exchanges where we will be listing it on. but more importantly, we'll be listing it on one or more regular exchanges. Let's call them that way. We have one confirmed and several in the pipeline, and they should be confirmed by the time that the token sale ends. I think that's mostly it. Are there any more questions from the audience? You can also ask them in Telegram if that's easier, or we will discuss, or we will answer you later on Telegram as well. So everybody who's not joined our Telegram yet, make sure you do. This is the place to get all information as quickly as possible. You will find the link on the website, and we will wish you a good day, and we will talk hopefully later. And then, of course, the awkward moment where I can't find the button to shut it off. Which is indeed crazy. All right, people, talk to you later. Bye-bye.